Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good wherever you are. You have found your way today to Speed Gaming 5 to watch a Link to the Past randomizer round of 32 tournament match between WillardJBradley and P-Train. We got to this match by having number 5 seed in this 64-man bracket, WillardJBradley, take a 2-0 win over Asder. 28 seeded P-Train took a 2-1 win over Top Life. And then these two got together. They played game one. P-Train came out on top of that, leading us to where we are today, game two. And joining me on the mic tonight is Udai Monistic. I am Reg. Udai, what are we looking at on this menu already?
Well, Reg, you definitely framed the circumstances very well. Of course, this is game two in their series. As you mentioned, P-Train having won game one. For those of you who weren't around to witness that, it was a bit of a sword hunt. And having spoken with Willard since then, he wasn't too worried about the swords necessarily. But for humor, seeing as it was something of a 20-minute difference, he did end up picking a Assured Sword as the change for game two. So there will be one less sword in the pool today. We'll start with it. And beyond that, not a whole lot of other things to worry about when it comes to the implications of that. A very straightforward game mode choice. The nice thing is that we start with a weapon, which means there's a lot less guesswork as to where we can and can't go early on. We'll simply follow our progressive chains immediately. So I'm really excited for this race. Game one was definitely a strange set of circumstances. Finding swords, say for example, in places like Gina's Cave, and other very random one-off locations. So hopefully for Willard, it's a little bit less of a go find that one thing and more of a, hey, which route are you going to take? But both of these runners are very capable of winning this race, winning this series. I'm excited to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think you nailed it pretty well with we don't want to see that go find one thing. It just, hey, there's a weapon. As a viewer, go find one thing just feels really bad to see it strongly favor one runner over the other instead of creating a close race.
I think everybody's always happy to find a hammer almost immediately, though. P-Train and Willard both leaving the Sanctuary at the same time with the hammer, which is an excellent find early in the game. This actually gets us pretty close to a way of getting to the Dark World almost. We just need a Moon Pearl, really, in a glove.
Yeah, it's really convenient because even though it does absolutely nothing as your very first item, hammer blocks more locations than pretty much any other except, I guess, the Moon Pearl. So being able to have that will just let us have a lot more variety of routing to potentially follow later on.
Well, early on, we're getting lots of really great information. Both runners actually checking the lumberjack ledge, which is not always commonly seen, but more importantly, we found that the bush crab actually had 8 bomb drops, which is really nice to find immediately. That's going to make Kakariko very simple for both runners. We also saw tree pulls of single rupees and arrows, 5 stacks, which are also really great finds. We don't have a bow just yet, but being able to replenish our resources this easily. We're going to skip the 300 that's on the lumberjack ledge, but the 100 here in the Thieves hideout, I suppose you want to call it that, the Thieves Grotto, certainly a very nice find as well, since you can buy your bottle item right away.
Yep. Pretty much the only thing we're missing now that I think these runners would strongly want for Kakariko is that aforementioned bottle, which would let them just get one extra check-in, not have to walk back for that. But it is really nice, and I would just like to shout out the lumberjack check route. It's really fallen sort of in and out of favors with runners as things go on and change and they compete with each other. But I will always be a fan of the early lumberjack check, just because it maximizes the number of tree pulls you can check in the super early game, and it ensures that you can check the bush crab, and if it's got a good prize, you can get 2 of them really easily between the one right outside the mountain cave and the Lost Woods.
Yeah, that's a really good point, seeing as there are a couple of tree pulls available to you in the area, particularly if you take advantage of screen transitions and having pulled the first one. We're not finding a whole lot else here in the actual Thieves hideout. A fair bit more money though, which will make it a little more comfortable leaving here, as we have a couple of other things we'll use our rupees for. Nobody really in the realm of getting Zora money anytime soon, though.
No, and with one of the 300s already on the Lumberjack hey, there's the bottle that I mentioned earlier. But with one of the 300s on the Lumberjack, if I remember correctly, there are 4 total of those in the pool. So only 3 more to find, and since Logic doesn't care about money in the slightest, they can be literally anywhere. So Zora money, if that becomes desperate, may see a Houlihan play later.
Absolutely. Although you say that the Logic doesn't care about money, but the Logic is money so far for both of our runners, as they have Fire Rod very early on in the game. We have quite a few weapons at our disposal of tempered sword and strength or better in some scenarios. Having Hammer and Fire Rod gives us tons of options and kind of eliminates a number of dark rooms from a consideration in terms of the Logic itself.
Yeah. If we were to walk over to Eastern Palace right now, we wouldn't be able to check the chest that's behind the dark room, so one that has the big key. But we could certainly get through the dark room with the Igors in it on the way to Armos Knights. Can't actually reach those knights without a bow, obviously, but that one's in Logic. The Dark Cross chest is in Logic, although going straight from the castle to the back 3 sewers with just a Fire Rod is not in Logic. That's a quirk that I've been told will be fixed.
Yeah, and you got to think that somebody who's going to do the castle after doing all of this kind of wants to have the mirror when they walk in. Although we don't quite have what we need to go up the castle tower just yet if we needed to. We would have the means to get through some of those dark rooms. We don't quite have a way to get through that beam, but something for consideration if we find another sword or maybe a cape. But having a mirror would allow us to do all of the things in the escape sequence much more efficiently. So I think anybody who can do that will try to do that.
Willard should be happy with that pull, I think. We're seeing a second sword already on the race game.
We get an almost a save and quit out of that. Perhaps he was expecting to find nothing, but both of our runners absolutely will stop for the Sword of Evil's Bane from a simple 8-second racing game.
Yeah. I'll be honest, if I were playing this Siege casually in Willard's shoes, I may very well have save and quit there out of spite, but in a race, can't really afford to do that.
I mean, he's a pretty funny guy. He may have actually just been trying to juke the audience.
Yeah.
Well, we will get our save and quits from both of our runners. The natural route, of course, taking us south. We do get a map check early on. It looks like the only pendant here in the light world is actually Eastern Palace. Definitely not the green pendant, though.
Yeah, we did see one of those red crystals at the Desert Palace, which we can potentially clear that once we get a glove. We don't know if the boots are required. Oh, Willard's going to the Houlihan room. I mentioned that earlier as a possibility. He's setting his camera here. He's going to jump a few times, and he'll drop in the hole under that bush. And his camera is slightly offset here, so the game will drop him in the Houlihan room. He can pick up a bunch of money and hope to find the rest he needs for Zora along the South Shore.
Oh, very strong route for getting tons of rupees, and considering the position that they're both in with their rupees walking into this play, Willard definitely making the decision to benefit a potential Zora play. As mentioned before, the 300 rupee stacks are not that common, but 100 rupees and 50 rupees is actually not that unlikely to get. Mini Moldorm Cave giving you 5 potential item locations, plus whatever you get with fake flippers, definitely a reasonable chance you'll get to your 500.
I did think there was only one actual 100 rupee stack in the pool. Was I mistaken on that?
Honestly, it's I'm less likely to have counted that than the 300s personally, so I could very well be wrong about that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I am very surprised going to Agahnim is very early.
The early Agahnim play is something I've seen a bit more frequently lately. I'll see several runners go dam there and then save and quit and walk back to the mini Moldorm Cave. And it seems like it's just something to combat the normal tendency to want to isolate that location until you go to the desert for something else.
And I think we'd all be remiss to say that we haven't at one point or another been burned by that cave. So, I mean, P-Train did find a sword there last race too, so it very well might have been just an attempt to try to hedge his bet from before. But certainly not something you want to get burned on, particularly not when you have a game 2 of 3 to potentially win the series. You may be willing to make higher variance plays for that reason.
Yeah. The alternate theory to that is that you've got a game to burn, so if you just play it safe, then either you get it now or you've still got game 3 to go for it. But hey, a bow. So we can clear Pendant Eastern as long as the big key isn't vanilla. What do you think about that?
Well, we have quite a few locations in the neighborhood for that. I would think that if the whole Zora sequence here doesn't work out, that's kind of the ideal place to go next, seeing as you have the 3 at Sahazrula's Hut. I do like that this did make both of our runners converge back together, though, despite some smaller differences in their route. So we'll get to see some side-by-side execution, whether or not the 2 of them decide to continue the fake flippers option here, or if they move on to Eastern area right away. I don't think there's any other really big choices unless you want to go escape, though.
No, probably not at this point. Although I think the sync here is showing us Willard spent the time on Houlihan earlier, P-Train spent the time on Agahnim, so they're showing us that those things take about the same amount of time, throwing us right back in sync there. And Willard save and quit. P-Train's actually going to be the one to make the fake flipper play here.
I think this is really gutsy. Those crabs would normally do 2 hearts of damage. He could potentially take 1 heart with the blue mail, but that's still kind of risky, all things considered. You could take Zora damage, very easily losing a lot of time if he wasn't a much better when it comes to movement than a lot of other folks out there. P-Train going for a bufferless or a sword buffer slash fake flipper setup and gets it in the first try. That's really nice.
Yeah, you've got to be fairly precise on that. As we see the cane on Lake Hylia Island, going to require mirror and flippers, but not going to be hunting for that specifically.
Now, I don't think I saw Willard jump into the water, actually, so I don't think he has knowledge of that yet.
He did. He knows about it. He went down. I think he even bought bombs. No, I don't think he would have bought bombs. I'm pretty sure he just checked because he already had plenty of bombs. But he definitely checked.
Yeah, that spot is definitely a pitfall for a lot of runners out there, so wise of Willard to check it out along the way. If you're going to head to Eastern Palace, that was pretty much the only good opportunity to check it.
Yeah, especially because he didn't choose to make the fake flipper play to swim his way by there. We saw P-Train abort his fake flipper play after the hobo, which with no Zora money, no Moon Pearl, and no way to do a splash deletion glitch with the items he has. At least as far as I'm aware, no way to do a splash deletion glitch. He wouldn't have gotten really anything out of going to the Zora area.
And Willard will save some time over P-Train because of the decision to check it along the way to or Lake Hylia Island on the way over towards Eastern Palace, as that's a much faster check of that location. Swimming, even if you're good at it, is considerably slower. We did get a lamp from the uncle, which puts a little bit more stuff in logic for P-Train, not quite a lot more, but is useful information nonetheless.
Yeah, it means that regardless of where the big key in this Eastern Palace is, we're supposed to be able to clear it with the items we've got available in Sphere 1. Willard doesn't know that, but he's still got 2 chances to find a big key and make that more or less irrelevant.
Well, it's always the best of both worlds when you do get your early big key in Eastern Palace. Can at least make some inferences about the rest of the dungeon and potentially consider whether or not he wants to finish it. Seeing as it is a pendant dungeon and not even green at that, pretty likely to bail if we don't have to go all the way to Armos.
Yeah, we've seen 1 item and 1 big key at this point. So still 2 items to pull, but also a map and compass each. So let's see how Willard routes this. I've seen skipping the vanilla big key chest as a somewhat common play. Like not especially standard or anything, but something I've seen runners do. So if this is an item, which it's not. So 2 items left to find in 2 locations. We're going to see Willard check both, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't have to worry about doing any kind of 50-50 coin flip, which, personally, if I was in a situation, I would be very relieved about that, even if it meant finishing the dungeon. At least there's no guesswork. Well, speaking of taking the guess, P-Train taking all the way down to Zelda's cell, finding some rupees along the way, but not a ton else. Will be rewarded with a shield, not quite the most valuable thing, but hey, I mean, we can block arrows.
With one more item, we can block fireballs. But yeah, really, shield being the only really unique item you find in the castle dungeon. Unfortunate and not really worth, but at the very least, it's only really a time loss if Willard Willard never goes for those checks, excuse me.
Exactly, because they're very likely to retrace each other's steps. And P-Train did a good job of getting a good death warp as well, really not taking all that much time, and doing this early in the run's actually really beneficial, as with Blue Mail, you really don't want to have a ton of hearts when you try to take a death abuse to get back to the beginning of the dungeon. So that could have taken a lot longer. It was just smart to do it when he did.
Yeah. Oh. So Willard really wants his Zora money. I'm sure it's not the first time it's happened, but this is the first time I've actually seen this room, this tournament, despite it coming up as a discussion point at least a couple times.
Yeah, oftentimes kind of a backup strategy if you can't get into Palace of Darkness because you lost your money from getting hit with Kiki or something like that. Eastern Palace Rupee is definitely a good backup, but in this situation, we'll push him just over the edge, so Willard has the option. Although I don't see him going to Zora just yet, so probably just securing it for later.
Yeah, with the way things have gone and with him having already done the South Shore, I would expect that not to come into play until at least after the Moon Pearl. But who knows? If they're getting desperate and trying to avoid an Agahnim potential play, then that's a thing, because we have a Master Sword, we have a lamp. So that's on the table.
Yeah, in your best case scenario, of course, you get all that with Catfish and do the whole combo all at once, but as of yet, really not much out of Eastern Palace. WillardJBradley probably doing the exact same thing that P-Train's about to do overall, but definitely doesn't feel good to spend that much time in Eastern Palace early and not get anything good for it.
Yeah, like if it was a crystal dungeon, then we could at least say, well, he got the crystal out of it. He had to do it regardless. But yeah, at this point, I'm trying to think of what we haven't seen but is available. So we learned the green pendants in Misery Mire, slow dungeon. And I'm really not thinking of anything except this shovel that Willard's running towards to and that P-Train just picked up. And Zora area, which Zora area not even in logic.
Yeah, because we already saw all of the back half of Escape from P-Train, so really not much else remaining. And we don't have that glove. That glove's kind of the linchpin of everything besides, once we're in the Dark World, the Moon Pearl. So we're seeing, a lot of fetch quests today. Mushroom from the dig spot. I don't know. You kind of have to laugh at that.
Yeah. Willard's going to save and quit to his house. He's going to go south the screen. He's going to use a fake flipper to go into the whirlpool and immediately turn that one in. And then it'll probably be the castle from him if this doesn't pay out with anything.
I love seeing this whirlpool, though. Not super commonly seen. Definitely a lot of ways you can use it to route Light World and Dark World, which is nice. You have some of these whirlpools that are consistent across both, but a great way of saving yourself some time walking. Once we have the boots, this becomes a little bit moot, but being able to do this now feels great.
Yeah. Now the real question, is this anything? And Willard is resetting his game. So we know where the Cane of Samaria is. That does require Dark World access, mirror, and flippers. So maybe a little while before we see it. But he does have the option to go pick that up and use that mushroom for fake powder later if he really wants.
And there aren't exactly very many ways to sequence break to get to that Cane of Samaria. Of course, we're talking all about this Cane of Samaria because of the implications of that mushroom and fake powdering later if we wanted to, say, access the magic bat location. Kind of a long sequence of events, but if there was something critical there, that knowledge would be essential. So if we wanted to sequence break that, we could potentially do it with, like, without the flippers, if we did like a fairy revival glitch to try and get there. I mean, there's not a whole lot of things you can do to actually get through the water there and a warp transition, as you can't really use the mirror unless you have those flippers in that scenario.
Yeah, you would need to set up some form of water walk, which my knowledge in this area is hilariously incomplete. The only example that immediately comes to mind for getting one set up in the Dark World is setting it up by dashing next to one of the pits that drops you into Skull Woods, and then running all the way down to the Dark Lake and jumping down from the north for a water walk. But that would be really silly, and frankly, at that point, just go find the flippers. You're almost certain to need them regardless.
Yeah, so I do find it a little strange that we had a hard reset from Willard on that basis, just because, it is quite a long chain of events to potentially take advantage of it. But you could fake flip, or not fake flipper, you could fake powder in other scenarios for health as well. So there are a couple of different things to consider. Half magic for both these runners as well. We have a decent chunk of safeties at our disposal. So we're not quite in a position where we can infer a whole lot about what's going on with logic. We get to see right side Hyrule Castle, kind of rarely seen actually, out of WillardJBradley here as he makes his way towards the castle tower proper. But he will finish the back half first and prepare himself for a death warp in the process as P-Train's making his way through Eastern Palace, kind of retracing over the same steps.
Stealing that mob key like he did is, by my understanding, pretty classic entrance randomizer play, right?
Being less familiar with entrance randomizer, not entirely sure, although it does make sense from your description, honestly, being able to turn around and get the most out of it.
Yeah, that's like one of the very few things that I know about it myself. But regardless, as P-Train's knocking down the Armos Knights here, he's going to learn there's really nothing in Eastern. And he's going to learn that his options are down to sequence breaking Zora or the Pyramid Ledge. We're down to that at this point. We've seen everything else.
A part of me almost feels like the Pyramid Ledge is more appealing to him, knowing that there is potentially 300 rupees on the horizon. Though that's not exactly a big reason to be doing anything at this point. We can definitely find some rupees elsewhere. But P-Train, kind of on the spot here to make the next call, appears to be heading towards the castle.
No, P-Train still has his shovel to turn in.
Yeah, it's true. So that'll get him his mushroom, and then he'll probably turn that in before he does anything else, to the lack of any kind of real progression, unfortunately, seeing as we already had the blue potion. Which is interesting, because if both of our runners end up keeping their potions, if Willard ends up going back to turn that in later or something, that's actually a lot of safety in their back pocket, blue and green, with half magic. If we find something like a cape or a Burna, it'd be kind of hard to kill these runners.
Yeah, having 4 full magic bars at your disposal with the magic cape means you can do pretty much anything dangerous. You've got carte blanche to do whatever you want. But really, I'm curious here. P-Train still got Houlihan on the table, which Willard already did. Willard made a big point of getting money and then chose not to sequence break Zora, at least so far. Remains to be seen whether he'll do that before Agahnim. Although the way he's routed it, I'm going to guess he'll take a death warp in the castle, which will send him back to the front and then go straight from there to Agahnim, just because that seems like the most reasonable reason to route the castle the way he did.
Yeah, it's always a nice thing when you're actually already in the castle and you can just, walk right up the stairs from there. Death warping from that front entrance, really the only good way of navigating all of this in the logical chain. So both runners, it looks like, will actually do their hard reset and keep their mushroom, which is good foresight, but probably not too valuable in the grand scheme of things unless that magic bat has something really important.
Yeah, it's a relatively low percent play, but at the same time, it's one of those, you would rather have it in your back pocket than get burned by the alternative in the worst case.
Yeah, and these two have made it deep into the bracket stage of the tournament for a reason. Hedging their bets definitely a smart long-term decision. Hey, if it's just that one fringe scenario, at least you got it covered. Whoa, Willard being very careful here to make sure that fire rod shot hits, intentionally taking himself down to half a heart, but nearly getting hit by the ball and chain in the process.
Yeah, there's the expected death warp, so looks like he'll just be following P-Train right into the castle tower. And P-Train taking a sec to recognize that the fire rod is the best weapon he's got for dealing with those ball and chain guards, which the burning animation's a little slow, but especially with his arrow count, it beats having to shoot each of them a few times.
Yeah, we'll definitely still want those arrows, as it's not that unlikely that we'll actually end up in Palace of Darkness after this chain, assuming, say, we find like Moon Pearl or something on the ledge, which, other than the regular progressive item that'll take us elsewhere in Hyrule or the Dark World, kind of likely at this point. But if you want those arrows for the mimics that you would find there, so preserving arrows is definitely a smart decision here in Castle Tower.
Yep. Bombs are pretty much everywhere in the Palace of Darkness. Arrows are surprisingly a little harder to find in that dungeon in my experience. But we have to find the Moon Pearl on the Pyramid Ledge directly before we can think about immediate pod plays regardless.
So that appears to be the question of this race so far, 25 minutes in almost. What's on that Pyramid Ledge? I mean, we could have sequence broke to, as you mentioned before, to go to Zora, but neither of our runners really entertaining that, either out of a good route in order to do so or short the rupees, respectively. So we're going to find out what kind of fight we got from Agahnim, check our Pyramid Ledge, and I think things are going to break open from there.
Yeah, I'm just going to be really sad if it's the flippers on the ledge and then Zora has the progression, because that would mean that these guys could have spared us this tower climb, but oh well.
It would also likely make both of them feel at least a little bit behind, as both of them have, well, I mean, Willard has taken some time to actually, invested some time into, getting the rupees, but did not actually do the sequence break. So that's always going to make you feel like you're a little bit off. And Houlihan available to both runners, immediately. So it would not be a stretch to think that your opponent did it. But P-Train will be a nice couple of rooms ahead of Willard walking into the Agahnim fight. Definitely saw some really great execution on the way up the tower, in particular the Circle of Pots room, pulling off a really nice boomerang strat. Well, if you have never seen A Link to the Past somehow, if this is your first time watching, the Agahnim fight is a 5-attack cycle. First one will always be a reflectable shot. Attacks 2, 3, and 4 have a 50% chance of being that or a blue ball attack, which wastes time. And the 5th will always be a lightning attack. So you want to have hopefully few enough blue ball attacks that you prevent an extra lightning cycle, but you get anywhere from 0 to 15 if you hit every reflectable shot. Hopefully that doesn't happen today.
Yeah, have we seen any recorded 15s in Randomizer? I know we've got a couple in vanilla, but
I have not personally seen it. The good news, of course, if you haven't seen a ton of rando either, is that this will be consistent RNG for bosses when it comes to cycles across both files. It's set when the seed is generated. So they'll have the same number of attacks to deal with or to contend with. P-Train actually missing a shot, so Willard actually does gain a little bit of time on this fight. There is one thing that you can do to save time in this fight, which is to knock Agahnim towards the center of the arena, which will, on average, reduce his warp distance. Beyond that, though, there's really not much time to save here.
yeah. So while P-Train sits through the post-Agahnim cutscene, or what's left of it in Rando, you did mention the tower execution earlier. I just want to mention that from my experience as a viewer, oh god, there's the flippers. But from my experience as a viewer, like vanilla NMG speedruns are very reset heavy in the tower among top level runners due to the blue ball RNG. So I wanted to call out both of these runners have NMG times in the 1 hour 30-minute-ish range. Willard being slightly above that, P-Train being right around 128. So definitely very strong execution on both that can be demonstrated and observed just by looking at their times there, because you don't get that kind of NMG time without being really good.
Yeah, and it speaks to consistency too. I mean, with the NMG run, there are over 500 screen transitions that you have to practice, and I think 530 something last time I looked at the Strat Hub. So, I mean, to be able to do things like, say, Circle of Pots consistently, to handle the Ball and Chain Guard RNGs, or to survive the Agahnim fight with half a heart remaining like Willard did, kind of requires you to be on point. I'm just very glad to see nobody died to Agahnim today, as that is one of the more punishing deaths you can take. But this will lead both of our runners to do the same things from here. P-Train did already check the hobos, so he has a nice chunk of change ahead of Willard at the moment. But they're definitely going to see the writing on the wall and follow their flippers. I mean, there's no other choice at this point.
Yeah, the good news for P-Train is he didn't Houlihan, so he's still about 135 rupees short of Zora. But the stun prize is red rupees. Looks like that's going to be the progression probably, although that doesn't rule out Zora have anything too. But P-Train can just farm 8 of these Zoras, even if he's choosing not to, and have money. It's a bit painful, but it wouldn't be the end of the world for him if he were to do it.
Perhaps not realizing he's short, actually. Although, like you mentioned, it's very easy to farm them, and he could do them, like all 8 of them in the area. So he's going to skip out on that for now, likely orphaning that for the rest of the run.
Yeah. Although that raises the question, what does this flute get us? And the answer is the Old Man on Death Mountain and the inside of Spectacle Rock. So that's... Zora is still a 1 in 3 chance of having progression here. If I were P-Train, I wouldn't be terribly comfortable isolating that, but he has chosen to.
Yeah, we'll find out shortly after he activates that flute just what the implications are for Death Mountain. As you mentioned, we don't have mirror or hookshot to really continue anywhere up there. Although the writing on the wall does seem to suggest that we'll find something. Willard's going to find out for us, though. 500 rupees today will get you a nice rebate of 20 rupees. So P-Train saving out big time.
Yeah, and that does confirm we will be seeing stuff on the mountain. So, good news for P-Train. He's not going to have to run back to Zora anytime soon.
I mean, look at it this way. It was better than a coin flip, and, it came up heads on that one.
Yeah, and in Rando, that's really all you can ask for, because everyone knows that so many other things aren't going to come up your way if you play enough seeds.
Oh, hold on. I'm getting this from the editors. He came up aheads on that one. I'm sorry. I misspoke. But he will check out the Old Man Cave, which is one item, as you mentioned. We do still have up the left face of the mountain, and I'm almost wondering if we're going to find like a mirror hookshot here, because this still hasn't really yielded much. And I'm struggling to think what else. We could find a glove. A glove would actually be pretty handy.
Yeah, my prediction is that we're going to see a vanilla mirror into vanilla pearl into a glove on the east side of the mountain. But I'm already wrong.
I mean, a sword's not bad either. Certainly not helpful to us when it comes to progression at the moment, but tempered is a nice comfort, particularly this early in the run. Knowing that you have pretty much another hour to kill pretty much every other boss with a good sword, really great comfort. It's like eating comfort food, really, like having a nice bowl of ice cream after a bad day. Oh, great, I got my tempered.
Yep. Just walk around, cut anything that matters down with one hit, except the bosses, as you mentioned, and even they get significantly easier.
Well, most of our higher damage class weapons now in the inventory, hookshot being added to the mix, which will allow us to extend this sequence to the other side of the mountain. P-Train lining up the pixel for a bomb jump here, and looks like he's going to get it.
Yeah, that bomb jump's actually really cool, because The way it's set up is that you actually wind up, it's obviously too far to do with a conventional setup, which is why a lot of runners will fail it. But if you set it up properly, you actually clip slightly into the rail there and you gain more distance that way. And it just looks super cool, in my opinion, compared to normal bomb jumps.
I believe it's only one of like 2 potential 3 tile bomb jumps. I mean, it's definitely a lengthier one by bomb jump standards.
Yeah. Willard went ahead and actually checked the Spectacle Rock item. P-Train just blind got it. I believe he's seen literally everything at that point, so he knew it had to be that. Willard has skipped a couple locations, though. And by that, I think I mean literally just Agahnim Cave.
Yeah, that's the only thing that really comes to mind. As you mentioned, we've really cased out everything that we could do otherwise. So P-Train with full health will actually be able to sword beam his way through the Paradox Cave here, getting one of those 300 rupee drops. Hopefully that doesn't lead him back down towards Zora later. And our Moon Pearl. So the puzzle's starting to come together a little bit. We have not seen the Dark World map screen yet, so we're not entirely sure what we need in order to hit go mode, but a large chunk of those items already well on the way. I think a mirror for that cane is kind of the big missing question. We have still not seen any gloves.
Yeah, we did see a Book of Medora in the other side of Paradox Cave. But really, at this point, what I'm wanting to see out of this seed, just to ramp up the silliness a bit, is I want to see both Turtle Rock and Swamp Palace as pendants.
Yeah, that would be pretty goofy. We wouldn't have to worry about an ice rod. And you said mire?
Well, we already know Mire. I was saying Turtle Rock and Swamp. Then you just stick the mirror in Ganon's tower and have a party, especially if the key's on the right side.
Right. Because there are, amazingly, believe it or not, folks, situations where you don't really even need the mirror. And that would be such a situation, so that would be pretty interesting. We got the ether check here for not a whole lot, so P-Train getting everything he can out of the mountain will definitely stop into Hera. Willard would have the option to do something like Spiral Cave or leave the mountain altogether, but I think he's going to follow suit.
Yeah, my expectation here is that Hera's a crystal, so we'll see it full cleared, and then we'll see the runners double back to Spiral Cave. And on the off chance they find 2 gloves, the dark side of the mountain after that. Otherwise, we'll see what progression we actually get. I'm expecting at least 1 glove to send them to the Dark World, though.
Yeah, as of this moment, oh, there's an ice rod. Well, the Turtle Rock possibilities are slowly unfolding, but that's a late Turtle Rock item anyway. But yeah, so a glove would get us through a bunch of the portals that exist out there. We do, of course, still have the one over by that we unlocked from the Castle Tower. So we could still actually head to Palace of Darkness without a glove. Certainly not the ideal scenario, but it's not a ton of stuff you need a glove for there anyway.
Yeah, I'm a bit of a silly person regardless. With that Castle Tower portal and the hammer, we can reach the South Dark World. And then this flippers plus hookshot or hammer plus hookshot combo lets us hookshot across to the west side of the Dark World, the northwest side, like the Village of Outcast. So we don't even need the glove at this point, but it would still be super convenient.
So this would be a situation where if one of our runners had sequence broken to get to the flute, it would actually be really painful if we weren't to find a glove here. And as of yet, I'm not really seeing any indication of a glove. Of course, we still have Moldorm in the mix. I didn't count the items exactly, but yeah, that'd be potentially a lethal combo.
Yeah, the only item we've seen in Hera so far is that ice rod. So there's potentially Moldorm or the basement plus Spiral Cave. And then after that, we'd be looking at a situation where potentially, even if you sequence broke to the flute, you'd still have to kill Agahnim.
Well, I'm impressed to see the first try bootsless Harapot clip out of Willard. Definitely going to save some time getting up to the top with that. Did you see if P-Train actually managed to do the same thing?
P-Train did not attempt Harapot at all. Although Willard found a green rupee in the big chest, so I'm silly. There is no item in the Hera basement. That's just going to be a map, and we've got Spiral Cave.
Yeah, so definitely some time saved for both of our runners here today. They're not going to have to worry about whether they deduce that item there or not, which is probably one of the least liked item locations out there. I'm sure there are plenty of opinionated views other than that, and I'm sure chat will share that with no doubt. But as you mentioned, P-Train will head over to Spiral Cave, and we'll see WillardJBradley do his Moldorm fight in the interim.
Yeah, this fight's not bad at all with Tempered Sword. You just slash and spin, one of each, and that's Moldorm down, doesn't go fast, doesn't do anything silly.
Yeah, that's a good point to make, that the enraged phase is really what throws so many people for a loop. And if you bypass that by simply doing too much damage, no big deal. Another thing that a lot of people don't realize about the Moldorm fight is that while the angle and duration of the turns is somewhat random, he does follow a prescribed movement pattern. So definitely something worth practicing if you're trying to get involved in, say, the next tournament, or if you're watching this, scoping out your potential next opponents. Moldorm RNG and Moldorm patterns can definitely be life or death, save your race sort of things to get down.
Yeah, and if you want to really get good at those, I'm not a great player by any means, so take any advice I give with a grain of salt. But my opinion would be, if you want to get really good, is we got a map check. That was the 5/6 crystal at Turtle Rock. I didn't catch where the pendants were. Pendant at Thieves Town.
We had Thieves Town. Yeah, Thieves Town and Misermire.
Yeah, but if you want to get good at understanding and being able to react to Moldorm RNG, play Vanilla, where you have to use the Fighter Sword, you have to go through the Enraged phase and hit him 6 times. If you can get good at the fight under those circumstances, you can do it well under pretty much any others.
Alrighty, well, we'll get to see a bit of a divergence here. Willard will head over towards Desert Palace, while P-Train takes his, slowly peruses the flower garden outside of Palace of Darkness himself. Has plenty of rupees to work with, so not too worried about anything here with Kiki and all of that. We have more than the 110 that we need. And we will finally see that Agahnim escape check from Willard, so we're kind of closing the loop on all the things that we haven't seen on his side. I am very impressed with P-Train's movement here, as he just walked right next to 2 different things that would have been time losses if he took damage there.
Yeah. Well done knowing where he can and can't walk to keep those things from hitting him. Hitboxes in this game can be a little imperfect sometimes, but we do see Willard opting against the desert check, headed up towards the Dark World portal at the castle. It'll probably be Palace of Darkness for him as well once he walks over. But he did get to see that there was nothing of value on the desert ledge, which honestly is probably why he didn't go in. He cannot full clear the dungeon without a glove.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, that is a scout advantage that he has over P-Train, being able to see that ledge. Smart use of the of timing it after getting the flute.
Yeah, P-Train has seen that ledge as well, though. He fluted there and then immediately fluted back to Link's house to go to the castle in the Dark World. Although Willard's not taking Pod, he's choosing Hype Cave instead.
Totally a valid choice. This will be a chain that, without getting 2 gloves, will stop going west. But definitely a couple things you can do while you're in the area. And if you find, say, like a mirror or something like that here in this cave, you can potentially get a couple of extra checks that would be very unfriendly to do in the other direction.
7 items on this chain, if he follows it all the way west, is actually more than Palace of Darkness, and he is rewarded with both a gold sword and a glove. So,
neither of which are immediately critical, but definitely good finds. Particularly that first glove, that's going to make all other Dark World access significantly easier for Willard. Not that he needs to go in any of the other directions at the moment. But definitely really good to just know where that is early.
yeah, it's a super convenience for him because he doesn't have to go walking to the castle everywhere. When he's done with this route after checking Stumpy in the digging game here, he'll save and quit so he can get back to the light world. But then he can just, okay, he may not save and quit with that double glove find. He can go into the Village of Outcasts now if he wants to.
Holy mackerel. I mean, not a very likely location, but it's really speaks to finishing your plays, because could have easily turned around after that, had more than enough out of Hype Cave to be like, all right, I'll come back for that later. No, that's the best case scenario for Willard's route.
Yep. And the mitts, like at this point, they only really open up the Dark Mountain, Misery Mire, and Ice Palace if he's feeling like that play. So not quite as valuable as the first glove. Although at this point, the first glove's more of, a fast movement thing, especially when combined with the flute. Like flute to 3 to go to the Dark World there, flute to 5 to go to the Dark World by pod, and so on. Meanwhile, the mitts actually do open new stuff for him. But and I'm getting too fixated here on the fact that there are crystal dungeons on this tracker that Willard can enter and clear. P-Train's in one of them. Willard's pretty close to Skull Woods, which is another. So,
well, the P-Train's credit, only like 2 or 3 total menu buffers for that hammer yump. Really crushing it overall. That's a massive time save compared to walking around in general. As a hammer yump would be probably you could probably do like 30 pause buffers and still be faster than simply walking. Of course, we still got to go through the maze anyway, so it's not exactly critical to be doing it, but if you have the big key, why not? You might find what you need.
Yeah, if you have the big key and the small key to get out, then hammer jumping is still a significant time save compared to walking the maze twice, assuming you're like at all fast. I think that 30 number you quoted is actually pretty close to the actual count.
Yeah, I mean, if you've never seen the side-by-side comparison, it's kind of nutty. Just how many... And so menu buffering is something that's worth learning for that reason. There are plenty of other great uses for it. Actually, in Thieves Town that Willard's in right now, a really good example of a place where you might use a lot of menu buffering. As if you were in a bad spot with, say, blind, you got off script, it's a good way to dodge projectiles, a good way to react to enemy RNG. Something that, as you mentioned before, you see a lot in NMG speedruns. And so pay close attention to how these runners are using their pauses. They are probably doing it at a specific time to try and maximize the information that they can glean from it. I would not be surprised, for example, to see P-Train with his full health. He should be able to skip actually 2 menus in the basement. He's probably been aware of his health the entire time here.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's great to keep an eye on, especially if you just enjoy the ideas of high-level play and want to learn it yourself just so that you can appreciate it as a viewer, or if you want to get that good as a runner. But P-Train got to sit through this long cutscene. I don't remember. How does this one stack up to the ones in Mire and Desert? Is it the same?
This is definitely a shorter one than Mire, but I think this one's longer than Desert. Although it's not like as big of a wall necessarily moving, it is about the same distance as Desert. Unfortunately for P-Train, taking a hit from the spike earlier, we'll actually still have to do the menus, but still good to see them that he was going for the sword beam strat. That's definitely a good time save in the basement in general. We'll get a chance to see if his turtle room is excellent, and so far the kick is up and it's good. Probably about as good as that room can go normally. Has lots of health to work with walking into this Helmosaur fight.
Yeah. And while sword beams would have been nice for him to have for that switch, I think it's normal strategy to intentionally take a damage from that turtle just before the main turtle room, right? Just so you don't have sword beams for that room. Because I know sword beams can be a huge pain in the turtle room proper.
Yeah, that'll come from, runner preference. I mean, it's not like it's impossible to deal with. If you hold your sword outstretched as you walk into that room or dash into that room, you don't have to worry about that. But, it really comes down to what someone prefers to deal with. P-Train making it look easy, though, so maybe that setup actually does make him feel more comfortable for the fight. I can definitely relate to that, though. Sword Beam's very easy to kind of throw you off from your normal strategy. But with that, P-Train will be on the board with his second crystal, ahead of Willard so far on that count. We saw Willard, while we were talking about Palace of Darkness, he actually dipped out of Thieves Town, which was a pendant. It's a pretty respectable play normally. But we'll see if that ends up being something important in the areas that he did not check.
Yeah, if I was paying attention correctly, I think he skipped the treasure chest game and the C-shaped house in the village in favor of coming up to the mountain. where he found the mirror, so that alone is pretty solid value. That's his Cane of Samaria, really.
Yeah, that does put all of the components for that in logic, and of course, it's just good to know. If you don't already know where that mirror is, that can be kind of hard to figure out, seeing as there's so many potential locations. We also pick up an ether, which we have not confirmed whether or not that's necessary, as it can only potentially open up our green pendant mire.
Actually, chat's saying something, and I think they're right, but I think we're in a situation where we are a Bombos medallion and a potential boots for a desert boots lock from Go mode.
Yeah, that does add up. As of this moment, for what these runners need in order to actually complete the game, I don't foresee them really going out of their way to try and find silvers, for example. They're definitely both very capable of a silverless fight with Ganon. So really nothing else besides that Bombos that we're really too concerned about until we find out information regarding those torches.
Yeah. I don't know what exactly the odds of the big key specifically being on the desert torch are. I think it's pretty close, somewhere between 1 and 3, 1 and 4, about 30%. But I don't know the official stats on that. And then there's always the 1 in 22 chance of a party there in Ganon's Tower.
Well, our routes have somewhat converged again. Unfortunately for P-Train, no mirror to make a complete route along through the south here, but it was just Cane of Burna, so nothing that he would necessarily need to worry about turning around for. We get something akin to a high five, as Willard appears to be heading towards Swamp by the looks of things, or maybe even Bombos Medallion.
Yeah, it's looking like Bombos into Swamp. And if we see a vanilla Bombos on Willard's side, may see him abort the play in favor of immediately going to Desert and confirming whether he needs those boots.
Yeah, that would definitely be the strong-headed decision to make, as really you just need to know that in order to determine whether or not you can go mode a ton of other stuff. Things coming up red out of the Bombos tablet, but still plenty of opportunity for Willard to save a lot of time in dungeons if that Bombos does come up.
Yep, it is looking like he is choosing the most item-dense dungeon there in search of that Bombos medallion. It's going to be Swamp for him. I am strongly biased against Swamp Palace, so I can't say I'm a fan of this play with the other options he's got on the table, but it is the numbers play.
The one good thing that's going for him in this is that if you really are just looking for one item, or likely one item, you do have at least a little bit better chances of just diving right to the back of it and spending a little bit less time overall, with the left side swamp area of the dungeon. So, the potential for a go mode sequence, not bad compared to, whether or not you had to check anything at all. But as you mentioned, there's a lot of locations. It is time consuming. A lot of people will not do this early on. And maybe Willard is considering that against his opponent.
Yep. When you're racing like this, the number one consideration for when you're deciding what play to make and not make is, do I think this play increases my chances of winning the race? Not of completing the seed, but of winning the race. And if that's what's driving Willard to play Swamp Palace now, then I have absolutely nothing bad to say about that.
It might be also Willard dovetailing off of the mirror find, as that was kind of an inspired choice to go up to Dark Death Mountain at that exact moment to find that mirror. So maybe doubling down on the choices that he had made leading up to this to try and follow this chain as much as possible. This might be the quote-unquote way of the hero. And if so, would be the one thing he would definitely need to get his first game of the series. Willard definitely playing like his tournament life is on the line here.
Yep, I mean, it absolutely is. This and the next game are both do or die for him. He's got to win both or go home. P-Train's got the game to give, but when you know something like that is at stake, it's pretty psychologically normal to want to gamble, I think, and try to get advantages where you can. Losing just feels bad.
Well, as we mentioned before, and as you mentioned just now, Reg, P-Train does have a game to give, so I'm wondering if we're going to see something a little bit more complete of a check here in Thieves Town. We did see C-shaped house and chess game on the way in, so P-Train has every incentive to try to be thorough, having not found his mirror and other things, along the way. So if we were to find a Bombos here, that would actually be really great news for P-Train, really awful for Willard. His completedness in the scenario, or the likeliness to complete everything, potentially the pitfall pitfall for Willard that would potentially win the series for P-Train. So we'll see if he decides to finish this dungeon or not.
Yeah. We do see Willard making the ultimate completionist move here, though. He's going to the left side of Swamp before even seeing the back. So I think if you know for certain you're going to do left side regardless, and you've seen the big key already, which obviously he has, it was in the first chest, I do think that this is the way to clear this dungeon. But that's a bit of a point for debate, and a lot of people will disagree.
Yeah, certainly a hotly contended dungeon when it comes to what people believe is the most ideal route. Now, the good news is that whether you finish the dungeon, come back in, or whatever it may be, as long as you do everything in one sequence, it's usually pretty close overall in terms of time spent. There's an optimal and a suboptimal route to do it, but you're not going to lose a ton of time on anybody as long as your movement's good.
Yeah, and Willard has definitely shown good movement throughout. I'm not going to say he's shown significantly better movement than P-Train. I think that their execution so far has been very comparable, but it's definitely been good. And saying that he would lose time by doing this would only really be accurate if P-Train did not do the same thing, which he's on the mountain now. He'll get his mirror shortly. So following Willard into Swamp may be on his mind once he pulls that.
Well, it really speaks to what you were talking about earlier when it comes to both of these two being, experienced NMG runners. You can see it in their movement, how they approach these rooms and these screens individually. Every single minute that you save off your PB from that is exponentially harder than the last, particularly once you reach the sub 90-minute threshold for that speedrun. So P-Train does have the edge there, at least in his likely movement advantage. I don't think Willard has been an active NMG runner for a little while. Would like to see that change, Willard, if you end up watching this back. Also, since we're kind of in a dead moment of progression, we'll see P-Train pick up his mirror here in a second. Good time to mention, there was actually announced today an all dungeons restricted major glitches tournament. So, folks, if you're looking on learning a little bit more about A Link to the Past and want to try a new speedrun, definitely encourage everybody to take a look at that on the main A Link to the Past Discord. I've been really stoked to hear that. And I'm sure there's going to be a lot of, I get the feeling that Speed Gaming will try to cover it. I can't speak for them, but that'd be awesome.
Yeah, it is worth calling out that that is a Link to the Past vanilla tournament, not a randomizer tournament. But it is still a super cool speed run, and I am personally quite excited to watch some of it myself.
Oh, come on, you can join us. It's not that hard to learn. They have so many good resources.
Yeah, I'm not going to get in why I haven't actively run the game in a long while. That's a discussion for not commentating a match. But
Fair
regardless, enough. Willard has made his way to just before Argus. He has no boots, so he can't go for the super fancy strats here. But he's got the gold sword, so it's pretty simple. Just pull and slash.
Yeah, not going to be able to get a 1 or 0 cycle, but pretty close overall. That's about as fast as this fight can be otherwise, as P-Train will be the first actually in the race to pick up the Canis Samaria, and will head towards the Mire area immediately.
Yep. He'll probably confirm this medallion, check Mire Shed and Checkerboard Cave, and most importantly, confirm whether he needs boots. Now that was a Quake, so cannot get in. It's a good sign. It means we're not going to be tempted into diving it prematurely looking for that Bombos. It would be a so-called galaxy brain play if we were to see that at this point, I think.
At least not yet. There's still a possibility. It would be a pretty bad day to have Bombos locked somewhere in that dungeon. So, as you mentioned, definitely good that we can't get there yet. So, yeah, here's the big scouting moment of the race. I suppose Gan's Tower is still in the mix down the road. As to whether or not we need boots, but we're going to find out pretty quickly if this crystal dungeon requires, the boots to finish it, and that's going to be kind of the linchpin item.
No, we do not need the boots for Desert Palace. So I think it's pretty safe to say that once either or both of these runners find the Bombos medallion, they're going to treat it as if they're in go mode, and if it turns out to be Ganon's Tower, then unlucky.
I would not be surprised at all to see, that both of these runners maybe pick up some items that are directly in their path, just because of how convenient it would be once they have that Bombos to find the boots anyway. There's a potential time save involved. But it would also not be strange to see people skip literally everything at that point. We're pretty well equipped overall. We have red mail, gold sword, we have a bow. Silver's not really too big of a concern. And a number of safeties to work with.
Yeah, definitely well equipped to handle literally anything this seed will throw at us at this point, besides a big key on a torch. But yeah, I think you're right. We will, even once these runners find that Bombos and hit some form of go mode, we'll probably see the in the way checks just because they're there. I'm thinking things like Laser Bridge, things like the Freezor Room and Ice Palace. I guess Willard's already in Skull Woods, so scratch those options, but you get the idea.
And of course, you notice that Willard doesn't, check everything in the front half of Skull Woods. He checks most of it, whatever he needs in order to get to the back. Definitely not trying to spend a lot of time anywhere. If we can just get to our crystals, we're in much better shape to finish up the race. We'll get nearly simultaneous boss fights, depending on Willard's mummy hallway here. P-Train walking into the Lamolus fight with some really nice equipment to work with. The Fire Rod, just 6 accurate shots, and we'll be done with this boss completely.
Yeah, Fire Rod shreds Landmolas more effectively than pretty much anything except Silver Arrows. Gold Sword actually does the same amount of damage to them, but it's a little unwieldy. And Ice Rod also does the same amount of damage, but it's slow. And a lot of runners just aren't practiced with that slow projectile because Fire Rod's about as common to have for that fight.
It is a really fun one to see, though. We got a really unusual sword slash out of Willard there. From the corner, from behind a spike, sniping him from safety, I guess. It didn't really look that safe. But yeah, taking advantage of the fact that Mothula can take damage if he's colliding with a block instead of a spike. Will manage to close out that fight. Of course, you would normally have issues with the gold sword in the vanilla game, as you're not really intended to get the gold sword in that scenario, but randomizer patches all the way since I think like version 5 or 6. It's been fixed for a long time, but easy to take for granted.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the magic powder on the pedestal. Good thing we saved that mushroom, huh?
The fringiest of scenarios potentially coming true before our eyes. Willard maybe even considering that now that he has that information. Hey, maybe I should check this.
He is absolutely doing it, burning all his magic right there. Oh, but P-Train found it. P-Train is in go mode. Okay, so Willard, if you're a Willard fan right now, you really want this to be boots. I can't think of anything else at this point that would help Willard. Although I do want to call out, both of these runners have 3 crystals right now. And they've only got 1 in common, that Tower of Heraclear.
Yeah, that is kind of a wild set of circumstances. Usually you see some convergence besides just, like, say, 1 dungeon. Yeah, as you're pointing out, it's not exactly likely for Willard to go check, the checkerboard cave unless he's in the neighborhood for other reasons. He does still have Desert Palace to consider, so it would not be weird to see him do it. But unless he's heading there now, he's likely to waste a lot of time.
Yeah, even if he does go there now, though, P-Train's just getting the advantage of getting to Go Mode Swamp Palace, where Willard full cleared it. That's a significant time save. And yeah, it is the desert here for Willard. Let's see if he checks Checkerboard Cave before clearing the dungeon. It's a bit of a long shot. I wouldn't expect him to do it, but he could save maybe 1 or 2 chest checks if he does that. I think the big key was vanilla, so the most it would do was save him for going for the big chest.
I think one thing that might push him towards checking Checkerboard Cave before doing Desert is the fact that he's already checked Agahnim. It does make it a little more appealing, but I mean, most people, like you're saying, would generally do it after the boss. You know, no real wrong answer on that front. In this scenario today, in this seed, the right answer is to go check Checkerboard, but I mean, sanity check here if you're watching back your race. Like, you can't really expect to, you know, forego all of this and, you know, find that Bombos first. And it doesn't really help him in Desert anyway, so grand scheme of things, he's not really losing a lot of time in this process.
Yeah, I mentioned it already, but I think literally the only check in this dungeon that Willard could reasonably skip if he did Checkerboard first would be the big chest. So that's not a huge time save. And I did call out P-Train getting to save time with Swamp Palace getting to go mode it. Willard will get to go mode Palace of Darkness when he gets over there. I do not remember where the big key in that dungeon was, but if it's early, that could be a pretty significant time save too.
I remember that we had it before we did the collapsing bridge, which suggests to me either right side or vanilla. So yeah, I mean, it looked like an early big key from the way that P-Train routed it.
Chat saying it was literally the first check. So if that's the case, then that would be pretty good. You just take the big key, then you go right side, and you just run that all the way up to the boss.
So divergent crystal pathing and divergent go mode pathing for these two runners, which is really interesting, sans the boots. If we don't find the boots at all, this would be a very unusual execution battle between the two of them. With no clear indication of who would end up coming out ahead on that, because those are two very different go modes.
Yeah, at this point, it's going to be hard to say who's ahead in really any capacity, at least until P-Train clears Skullwoods and equalizes out or gets ahead on crystals and has all the same crystals Willard does. Like, if I were to guess right now, I would say that Skullwoods is probably faster than Palace of Darkness, especially considering P-Train is entering the Argus fight now, has the slight edge on that. Willard's still got to watch that cutscene for several seconds, but it's close. And there's definitely a lot of room at this point for either runner to play brilliantly and pull ahead, or make a highly unfortunate mistake and fall a little behind.
Was that a highly unfortunate mistake, you say?
I say.
Anyway, sorry about that. The other thing to consider too is, that Willard did spend some time checking stuff in Skull Woods, and there's still the possibility he could skip Checkerboard Cave, forget about it altogether. So we'll see in a moment whether or not that happens, but we will have almost simultaneous, or almost high-fiving crystal drops and catches. So yeah, I mean, this is going to be a really tight race, assuming that everything goes the way that we've predicted.
Yeah, which you are right. It does depend on Willard going back to his mirror portal, taking that right turn, going to Checkerboard Cave, which looks like he is. So Willard will be in at 21 and 22, probable go mode shortly. And while P-Train's choosing Ice over Skullwoods, perfectly reasonable play. They're both in opposite corners of the world. You just flute to whichever one you want to do, and that's that.
Well, P-Train not winning the moral victory in my eyes because he didn't do the 4-frame time save for resetting his altitude variable off the bird before entering the dungeon. But you know what? I'll forgive him this time. We'll do the fastest of go modes, the blazingest of runs throughout this dungeon, though. Really not stopping for anything. An Ice Palace bomb jump, a couple of, slippery rooms, and we'll be all the way to Cold Stare before you know it.
Yep. Ice Palace is the one singular dungeon that you can clear without making a single check. Even Swamp Palace requires you to get that guaranteed key out of the first room. Actually, I guess Skullwoods, you don't have to do any checks either. My apologies. But still, with the bomb jump, you can get anywhere. You can't get anywhere in this dungeon without checking chests, but you can get to the boss.
Well, speaking of bomb jumps, you can get a whole lot of places in this dungeon with bomb jumps. This is kind of a P-Train having an unfortunate scenario where the Stalfos Knights here, the trigger for whether or not they're vulnerable to bombs is actually shared across the entire room. So one of them stood up, and that made both of them invincible. A little bit of a time loss that will actually give Willard some time to get like a screen or two ahead from where he was before compared to P-Train, which in the scenario we're in right now is kind of like really critical.
Yeah, that was what, at most probably about 5 seconds, but that's 5 seconds is more than the margin you need to call a race a tie in this tournament, so that's a thing.
Of course, assuming that Willard gets his, and okay, good.
Yeah, getting that room right, getting both of them down with one bomb while one of them still standing, that can, you did explain it already, but that can be a little confusing to a viewer to try to understand why that works. But it's pretty satisfying as P-Train's having a bit of trouble with these stairs too. Did he try to do the spin clip and miss it, or did he just
and then he tried to like manually position himself into the stairs afterwards, which is much harder to do. So he regains the moral victory in my eyes for attempting that and then getting the hookshot clip to get into it afterwards. Didn't save time, but looked cool, and I admire his courage.
P-Train skipped the Freezor chest, no, he skipped the Pengator chest, but checked the Freezor chest, then dropped down and got silvers. They're not boots, but that's still a few seconds that Willard is not getting.
And of course, the big thing being that, that's a nice chunk of time saved for the Ganon fight. And there's really no reason to think Willard would have stopped there in the first place. I'm very surprised to see P-Train stop there in the first place. Silver's not going to do a ton for remaining boss fights. Really nothing for remaining boss fights besides Ganon. And I guess if we had to do Armos 2, that may be a consideration for the Ganon's Tower, but I mean, it's not that much faster. It is faster, but not that much.
Yeah. Including the Ganon fight, I would be surprised if it came out to 30 seconds across the whole thing. But we did see both runners show off the power of the gold sword with beautiful corner kills there, just a couple real easy splashes on all three puffs simultaneously. So that's crystals for both.
And while it may not have been the most threatening fight in the world, as you mentioned, it really can get away from you if you don't have them there in the corner. So kind of an essential fight at this point to really be nailing. You shouldn't be having that get away from you with this equipment, but all kinds of things can go sideways in A Link to the Past. Thankfully, they're really keeping the grips on their boss fights as never a more critical juncture in the race.
Yep. Now we do have both runners on 5 crystals, and they're headed to the one that the other one has already done for their 6th. So I think this will come into play where Skull Woods is a significantly faster dungeon than Palace of Darkness, even with an early big key and go mode. So I think P-Train's got the slight edge here, and we'll be able to measure how much of one it actually is when we get the boss kills in here.
This almost seems like, assuming nothing goes catastrophically for either of our runners, a check to see if it's going to be a boots required Ganon's Tower, and then pretty much just GT execution from there out. Bootsless GT, not the most fun, but also not terribly difficult. The gauntlet itself, probably the hardest section to do without.
Yeah. Everybody likes to quote the gauntlet as the hardest section of the tower, or at least combat-wise, and they're probably right, but even with the equipment especially with the equipment they currently have, it's going to be a lot more about optimizing the really small stuff than having actual difficulty with it.
Or getting that blasted Stalfos to stop running the other direction. Or a Zazax. I don't know, those are always the bane of my existence. The worst thing about the gauntlet really just being the RNG that they have to face. Thankfully, the bosses and, well, I guess the boss that P-Train's dealing with here in just a moment, Mothula, definitely heavily RNG. But if you're fast enough, not really concerned. Willard not going to have to worry too much with his health situation about his RNG with Helmosaurus, so should be pretty straightforward for the two of them.
Okay, P-Train's up to 4 slashes now that haven't counted. 5? Come on, Moth, cooperate with him, will ya?
This is
There we
basically the
go.
worst.
Yeah, I know a lot of runners like having boots for this fight because you can get a free dash into him at the very start, and that does damage. It just knocks him right into that block from his starting location, but without that, you've just got to rely on your slashes directly. Anyways, Willard's got a big key, so off to the races he is in Palace of Darkness. But P-Train's already done with Skullwoods, already 6 crystals, and it's just Turtle Rock and Ganon Tower for him at this point. So we're talking minutes at this point for sure.
Yeah, so I mean, potentially even the difference between whether you go left or right in Ganon's Tower. So I mean, this is kind of an interesting scenario. You pretty much have to go left when you get there. I mean, unless you find the boots beforehand. I guess the question would be, would you continue going left if you didn't need the boots?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I know a lot of runners like the so-called Dark Magician style strats. They'll go to the Stalfos room. And if I went straight left, skipping Hope Room, I would be tempted into that myself if I found small keys. But every runner's got their preference on GT routing, and unfortunately, I can't claim to know what either of these two runners like on that.
Yeah, being that it is 20 plus locations that you can end up finding it in Ganon's Tower, definitely not the best thing to try to predict. You know, there's always going to be scenarios where you just can't make the right choice. But yeah, so just a dungeon shy of that, P-Train will be entering in Turtle Rock here in just a moment with his earlier found Bombos. T-Rock, not exactly a split to slouch on, certainly a lengthier dungeon as well. So I can't really imagine either of these runners taking a death when it comes to Turtle Rock and early Ganon's Tower, but certainly not completely off of the radar, as there are quite a lot of heavily damaging enemies in both segments, particularly Hokuboku and Chain Chomps. Although I'm pretty sure P-Train's got his Turtle Rock down to the point where that's not too big of a concern.
Yeah, at this point, my expectation would be that both him and Willard really have their NMG strats and splits down, which Rando likes to throw a lot of those for a loop, even once you're in the dungeon, just by giving you alternate equipment and room for alternate strats, but there is none of that in Turtle Rock. Like, he's got a gold sword, which will do extra damage to things, but even the things we care about most die generally in one hit to Tempered Sword, so, or I guess 2 simultaneous spins, as the case may be.
I think having Gold Sword sometimes one of the more confusing things, though, as you mentioned about playing Randomizer, if you're not used to, say, getting Gold Sword in a route, which these two would not in an NMG run. Just the difference in damage. Some things get killed that don't, or some things don't get killed that normally would, like Hokuboku, for example, those pokies. The sword spins and slashes working a little bit differently. So, I mean, if there were less experienced runners, I would expect that to be a factor. I have to imagine both of them feel very comfortable with their strats either way.
Yeah, and it's like you mentioned, they've got their strats down. They know what they're doing. It's just up to them to not slouch and not lose time in silly ways, as people in general are very prone to doing. Because this is a very long, very linear dungeon. There's really not much you can skip, even in Randomizer. Like, we haven't seen the big key yet, right?
Correct.
So yeah, that's going to be vanilla, which means they can't even skip that one chest. So we're seeing pretty much everything in Turtle Rock, plus or minus the laser bridge, depending on how the last couple small keys lay out.
Well, the last logical hope for closing the gap for Willard, I mean, besides execution, would be that Ganon's Tower torch key, if it were there. I can't fathom a scenario where Willard would, say, check Mimic Cave where P-Train wouldn't, seeing as he already skipped the big chest in Ice Palace. Like, it doesn't seem like a likely check to me. But something like that would be a reason that, they both have to go jumping back into the world, searching for yet another item. But as of now, this really does appear to be P-Train's race to lose. He does have an equipment advantage. He has half a dungeon lead. And P-Train being no slouch, he can't really expect to gain all that time back normally.
Yeah, at this point, if you're rooting for Willard and rooting to see a game 3, like you said, it's going to be the torch and then Willard the Galaxy Brain Boots somewhere in the rest of the world outside the tower. Because if we see the key on the torch, I would expect to see a full clear of the Ganon's tower basement looking for them. At this point, there is nothing keeping those boots outside of Ganon's tower, so that's at least as reasonable place as anywhere else for them.
Yeah, I can't think of because I mean the logic, of course, being determining whether or not you could find it there. I don't think we've seen anything that was boots locked so far in the seed. Was it a compass in desert on that torch? I mean, really nothing that would prevent us from finding it there.
Yep, just a compass on the torch there, and the only other 2 hard boots lock locations are King's Tomb and the Bonk Rocks. And we obviously cannot see either of them without boots, but we're able to reach Ganon's tower anyways and fully in logic. So, yeah, absolutely nothing keeping the boots from being in there in the worst case.
Well, as our runners do a bit of some routine Turtle Rock, good time to remind everybody, if you haven't already, give both of these runners a follow. They're really excellent resources within the community themselves. Willard, of course, well-known racer in the community and plays a lot of Randomizer, and P-Train actually doing quite a few tutorials if you're interested in learning more about the game as well. So both really recommend following them if you're looking to learn more about the game in particular, as they have a lot to share on that front.
Yep, and while these runners also still continue making their way to Turtle Rock with P-Chain almost to Laser Bridge, I'll give a shout out to our tracker tonight, Link Force. Then keeping everything lit up so that chat can see what's going on in the race, then keeping Willow active in chat and keeping chat informed that way as well. Generally being an all-around great guy, and P-Train gets his small key in the first chest on Laser Bridge, and he is off to Trinex.
I'm also a big fan about how our tracker keeps us honest. It can be really easy to lose track of what you're talking about when you're on the mic, and having a tracker is just a great peace of mind.
Yeah, I can definitely confirm that. I do a fair bit of tracking myself, so just if I stop and think for a couple seconds, I can definitely feel the difference in mindset when I'm doing one job versus the other. So shout outs to trackers.
Well, here comes the Trinex fight for P-Train. Not opting for any kind of backdoor strap, but will get a fast fight nonetheless. Just one cycle, it looks like, from the head, which is best case scenario for that version of the fight. Certainly not going to lose much time if Willard does the 0 cycle, as that's a pretty insignificant time difference. We'll switch to his hook shot so he can do a sword climb when he enters Ganon's tower. P-Train making the most out of Turtle Rock so far.
Yeah, and you mentioned the 0 cycle strat, and that looks really cool to see, but it's not viable without the boots, is it? You just cannot get back there fast enough, right?
Oh, that's a good point. Not that I'm aware of. Yeah, I don't think you're able to do it unless you have the boots, although I have not tested that myself.
Yeah, so that's actually probably the most disappointing part of not having boots at this juncture. Just won't be able to see that strat, because I really do think it looks really cool.
All right, well, we may have missed our opportunity for it, but there is a big key guessing game that we like to play in Speed Gaming channels. Throw your numbers into chat. I don't know if the command's been run or not, but if not, just do it for posterity. Out of the 22 locations that big key could be in, what do you think it's going to be today, Reg?
I generally, when I give a number, give the number 10, which with conventional Hope Room into left side routing that we see today, that we're not likely to see today, puts it in the first chest of the rando room. But it's just the lucky number in general. But what about you? What are you looking at?
I'm going to throw out a 14, assuming it's Bob, right above Armos 2. In fact, I'm going to call that location regardless of number, since I didn't throw it in the chat anyway. We'll see shortly whether or not that ends up being the case. 2 items in, we have 1 key. P-Train will, of course, mirror out and head towards the left. Kind of surprised that he even checked Hope Room, although it makes sense. It's fast.
Yeah. On Willard's side, we saw him check Laser Bridge, which is also somewhat fast, but it's slow compared to not checking it. And for his trouble, all I saw him get was a blue boomerang.
Yeah, definitely. Worth a shot. Willard, of course, doesn't know where he is in respect to P Train in this race, but finding boots there would have been a nice time save. Even if it didn't end up being necessary for the Gans Tower Big Key, you certainly save a nice, large chunk of time. Oh, speaking of boots,
Yeah, boots in chest number 7. Anybody who had that loses the big key game, but they win the fun. So we can go fast now at the very end of the race.
it may have taken a while, an hour and 23 minutes, but finally the run can start. So P Train now has access to the full gambit of strats for Gen's Tower. We'll take advantage of his equipment advantage too. Um, go through very quickly. Unfortunately, the red boomerang kind of weird sometimes. We'll get a slight delay on that switch. But yeah, so we get to see some of the high caliber execution that both of these runners have been looking and longing for this entire race. I'm not even surprised to see that there's a couple of opportunities to dash here not being used, as there's our big key. It's kind of easy to forget you have them sometimes, even if you just found them.
Yep. That's a big key in chest number 9. That'll send P-Train off to the races, up to the top. And just as Willard is entering the tower, so unfortunately for Willard, he doesn't really have any chance to save time with his routing, short of a full left route and skipping the Hope Room. But there was a small key in the Hope Room, so he's got a fair bit of chance to lose time if he follows that to the right. We'll see where he goes.
Well, this is kind of the opener I expected from both runners, is to actually look to see that torch immediately. I was actually very surprised. I mean, even though it is too easy to get chests, I was just shocked that P-Train didn't go to check this first. Ended up working out, though. He has the keys that he needs. We'll have no difficulty getting through the very end of the dungeon with the layout and configuration he ended up going through, so it ended up working out.
Yeah. And there were, what, 2 small keys in this room in addition to the boots? So that's... You only need to be carrying 1 when you go upstairs. No, Willard is going for a Dark Magician style strategy, which will send him all the way to the right, and that's going to lose him a ton of time, just knowing where that key is. Unfortunately, he doesn't know it yet, but he'll learn pretty shortly.
Yeah, that's a big bummer, as he was pretty... I mean, he's definitely pretty far behind most of the gauntlet. In grand scheme of things, that would be considered kind of far behind at this point, but the gap that he could have closed, say through superior execution in combat or other stuff like that, kind of escapes from him at this point. Going right side will, of course, take him through a full loop before he comes back to do left again. So short of some catastrophic things happening to P-Train, it's really hard to imagine a comeback at this point.
Yeah, I mean, you hate to see it, but randomizers like that sometimes, and when you play enough seeds, you just learn to play the long game and live with it, really. It's just unfortunate in this specific situation because Willard's already down 1-0 in a best of 3.
I gotta say, though, despite the way that this race is turning out, I mean, both of these racers have done a really excellent job all throughout the race, reading their scenario, trying to make decisions informed on what they found already. It can't be overstated just how smart these two have played this race. And as you mentioned, sometimes Randomizer just doesn't turn out the way you hope for out of the route. But I mean, every single thing that we've seen them do this race, I haven't seen a single really truly questionable decision. Besides maybe like what we do with rupees early on, and that ended up benefiting P-Train in the long run anyway.
Yeah, I would like to say Willard is using the blue boomerang here, showing the quote-unquote intended strategies as intended by the speedrun community, not by the developers. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. Both runners have definitely, through the course of this race, shown why they're still in the tournament at this stage, as P-Train's taking it a step further and walking across the gap. But I think both runners have definitely justified being that they're in the top 32 of the tournament. Like, nothing to complain about with their play at this point. Been very solid from both runners all the way around. And it's a race. Unfortunately, somebody's got to come in second.
Well, looking at P-Train's hover there, that was really impressive. If you do it like that, and that was pretty close to optimal. I mean, it wasn't, perfect. Who can really mash at 30 hertz? But I mean, when you do it really well like that, that saves about 6 seconds over an optimal Moldorm 2 fight. So P-Train really showing his expertise, as that's kind of a move you do to secure yourself against the potential tie. You got to think that the nerves are really high at this point. An hour 28 minutes into the seed, you're finishing Agahnim 2. 90-minute seeds, not that unusual in this tournament, even sub 90. So both of them probably feeling pretty tense at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to just shout out P-Train's Aga 2 fight. The only thing denying him the 2 cycle there was a blue ball. That was pretty close to perfect as well. Pretty much everything P-Train did from really the whole tower, I would say, has been fantastic, aside from those minor mishaps with the red boomerang. Very well played overall.
And it's something that can't be overstated when it comes to like where you should be trying to get your time save from. Say if you're doing like the vanilla speed run, is Gen's Tower, Turtle Rock, two of the biggest segments that just constantly eat up time from people, and are things you should practice really hard. You can see evidence that these two have practiced them just based on how they approach all these rooms. So it might look pretty automatic to the viewer if you're not familiar with running the game, but this is really the result of hundreds of hours of playing this game.
Yeah, and just to provide an example of how easy it is, even for the absolute best runners, to lose time in Ganon's Tower, I was watching a couple of top-tier runners that'll remain nameless play NMG recently, and if I recall correctly, their Ganon's Tower splits and their PBs literally lost like 45 seconds each to gold. So really easy to lose time at the end of the game. But P-Train's got Ganon down in a flash. Hardly anything to talk about in that fight with how clean it was. All he's got to do is cross the bridge and he'll be done.
And P-Train will be finishing in official first place time on SRL of 1:29.48, getting that sub 90. Very impressive. I wish I could do that in NMG myself. So making it look easy despite taking down a genuinely difficult opponent in WillardJBradley. P-Train will advance to the next round. GG's in chat, of course. We'll see if we can get him in for an interview here shortly, probably after Willard finishes his Ganon fight, as he is very close as well. Yeah, I mean, the ending of this race, it's so quick. I mean, he finished his Agahnim 2 fight at 1:28, pretty much on the money. It goes to show you just how fast Gold Sword Silvers is. Willard will have a silverless fight, but the first 2 phases with Gold Sword, pretty much automatic 1 cycles unless something goes sideways. And 12 sword spins certainly not difficult to do with half magic and, the red mail, pretty safe scenario.
Yeah, the silverless fight is bread and butter of pretty much any top-level vanilla speedrunner like these guys are. Though while Willard knocks down Agahnim 2, he'll probably get it in 3 cycles like P-Train did. I'm looking at the bracket here real quick. P-Train will advance. He will play against the winner of Yagamoth and Aussie 101 in the round of 16. So we'll see what his thoughts on that are when we get him in after Willard finishes here, probably in a couple minutes.
Additionally, looking ahead to the schedule for the rest of the evening, as well as for tomorrow, we have a couple of matches to look out for. For tonight, at 8:20 p.m. Eastern Time on Speed Gaming 3, you got Trinex versus Jet 082. And we also have at 10:20 Mentos Man 8 versus Dune Tap. A couple of matches that'll be on Speed Gaming's main channel. A couple more matches tonight to look out for after this one. Of course, stick around if you'd like to hear words from P-Train and Willard. I'm sure they have plenty of things to say about this race. A very exciting game 2 of this series. Well, here comes that Ganon fight for Willard, getting 6 very easy hits early on for phase 1. Same thing for phase 2.
Yep, and we are on to the Warps phase, which will be similarly quick and generous in this seed.
Honestly, I think this is the best feature of Randomizer, is that everybody has the same Ganon RNG. This is a 50% chance that he warps when you're playing this vanilla. So that could potentially go on for a very long time. Knowing that your opponent has the same RNG on this, kind of a nice quality of life, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would like to give the similar shout out to Agahnim RNG, but Ganon's the one you see in every single seed. So that's the big one.
Well, the nice side effect of not picking up those silvers in Nice Palace is that we do get a chance to see some really nice silverless execution. We did have one blue Ganon early at the beginning of the fight trying to get the free cape spin, but Willard does know how to do good triples, and will actually nail a couple really good ones. One thing to note about how he does this is he's delaying his actual charge up animation until he's within range to actually get the sword spin. An essential feature of getting triples with the fire rod. Not really needing the half magic actually because of how well he's doing these triples overall. So if nothing else, a good reason to finish your seed is also to get practice at that, as that is a really great thing to have in your pocket for when you do, say, vanilla speedruns, or if you're in a tight race scenario. So that'll be it for Willard. He will be able to cross the, well, I hope he'll be able to cross the bridge here. He'll finish up with official SRL time of 1:33:57. Get your GGs in chat, folks.
Yep, and we'll see if we can get Willard and P-Train in here and talk to them about the seed a bit. And we do have both of our runners, P-Train and Willard. GG to both of you. Very good runs overall.
GG.
So
GG.
So I guess first obligatory question, especially with how strange the early game was in this seed. Did you both have fun with it?
I mean, kind of. I wasn't a huge fan of the Zora conundrum, trying to figure out if I should farm rupees. And then all of that work to get the pearl just to end up with a Bombo site. What really was not my favorite scenario.
Yeah, the following the chain was interesting, and then as soon as, you know, boom glove, boom mitts, here's the entire game, good luck, have fun. And then it's like, okay, well, this is just a bunch of coin flips, so it's like impossible to try and figure out where your opponent is or what they're doing, and it's impossible to make like good choices because it's, you know, there's just so much to do. So
well, I gotta say, this will be an interesting watch back for both of you, as the divergence, as you mentioned, there was so many coin flips available to you. The divergence was replete; it was everywhere. You know, we saw 3 different crystal dungeons at one point for each of you, except I think you were sharing like Hera or something like that, and just a very strange route to separate both of you throughout the entire world, and both were valid choices. As it turned out, there's really only a couple of things that were different in total checks. And I have to imagine like your total item count is probably going to be pretty similar. I wanted to ask you, Willard, how were you feeling when you saw that powder on the pedestal?
I mean, I thought it was funny. I wasn't going to get it. I was glad I saved that mushroom. And if that ended up being Bombos, that would have been hilarious. But I wasn't very optimistic. But yeah, seeing that there was kind of a relief. It would have been nice to see Bombos, but it was fine. No biggie.
I was kind of rooting for it myself. It would have been kind of rude to have to go all the way throughout the rest of Hyrule to get it, but it would have been funny. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, it would have been hilarious. It would have been great.
I mean, how many times do you more or less enter go mode by reading the Master Sword pedestal?
Not very often. Yeah, it's a tough seed to talk about because it was kind of all over the place. I was feeling pretty good getting to go mode ice and pod. Missing silvers kind of stinks, but it's whatever. Honestly, the only thing I wish I had done differently was as soon as I got the mirror up on Death Mountain, I should have gone and checked to see if boots were required. Obviously, hindsight and all that, I would have gotten my Bombos and would have been able to go mode swamp as well. But yeah, it's about it.
Yeah, for me, once I hit
I was pretty happy.
Yeah, for me, once I hit Village of Outcasts, at that point I realized like I had pretty much every dungeon open to me. So I knew Death Mountain was high density. I also wanted the Turtle Rock information. And then I got the mirror. I was like, well, I kind of want the boots information too. I think I found Ether on the mountains. I was like, oh, well, if this gets me into Mire, that's interesting. I'm probably not going there, but at least I know. So clear desert, and then right after desert, I dipped into Checkerboard Cave, and there was Mama. I was like, oh, snap. I think I got to go mode Swamp, Ice Palace, Skullwoods, and Turtle Rock.
And the major difference between what the two of you were able to go mode was either Palace of or was it Skullwoods?
Swamp. It sounded.
Yeah, Swamp.
Although
pretty similar.
Skullwoods was pretty quick.
Yeah.
And that was a really nice pod for go mode because I got to skip the entire back half and the bow side, so I was really happy with that.
Yeah, I've full cleared pod for nothing.
Although I have to say, a 3, buffer hammer jump, nothing to, turn your nose up at. That was pretty impressive as well. I did want to ask you though, P-Train, what was the inspiration behind checking big chests in Ice Palace? Was it just because it was pretty quick?
Yeah, so I usually don't check items in Ice Palace because the ratio of dungeon items to actual items is not favorable. But I think it was either mine and Willard's last game, although I don't think it was, or the daily last night. But somebody made a comment because I had Master Sword in Ice Palace, and someone was like, "Oh, I can't believe Preston didn't check the Free Sword chest because it's so quick." And I was like, "Well, I guess I'll check it today." And then I got the big key, and I was actually mad because I'm like, "Oh, great! I got the one fetch quest I could have gotten in this dungeon," and then checked the big chest and found silvers. I was like, well, I guess it's worth it, honestly. So I was pretty happy with it overall, but that's kind of what was going through my head. Last race, I had the option to check it. I did. And people were like, I can't believe you didn't check that chest.
Well, from our side of the booth, it was definitely an interesting find. But in the grand scheme of things, both of you are exceptional enough at the game where silvers isn't necessarily a gigantic difference. And in this case, it wasn't, critical or anything, but it was an interesting decision nonetheless.
Yeah. And then, at that point, I was really, silvers were nice, but of course I was checking for the boots. And then when you hit Ganon's Tower, I opted to go for Hope Room first. The big key could have been on the torch, but that really wouldn't have affected what I did in GT. So like whatever path you're going to take to find the big key, if it's on the torch, all of a sudden that path now becomes a path to find the boots. So I did left side first, or I did the right side Hope Room. Mirror did Dark Magician. Of course, saw the torch was dead, so was pretty happy. I felt good. I didn't feel great. I didn't feel great about the pod clear. I felt like I might have been much later to the gloves than Willard was. But it's so hard when you get a seed like where Bamos was. I felt really good. I felt like I found it super early, but the seed was also so open so early in the game. It's kind of hard to tell how quick your opponent, because if Willard was early to the gloves, maybe he was early to the mirror, and then maybe he was earlier to Bamos. So I felt good, but at the same time, it's, you're fighting Ganon just hoping that you got done first. And there was no point where I thought, man, I have this in the bag.
You did describe it pretty accurately there. That was pretty much how it worked out.
Yeah, Willard was first to the gloves while you were in Palace of Darkness. He chose to go south. He went straight to the mirror after that. It's just as he said, he didn't go for the desert information immediately. And that was where that snuck back into play.
Yeah, you would think clearing crystal dungeons would be the way to go. But just unfortunately the nature of Randomizer, it's just not always the best play.
Yeah.
It's always one.
Anyways, there is one question I want to ask about Willard. Your rupee routing early in the seed. You showed off Houlihan, you showed off the Eastern Palace rupee room, and I was actually pretty happy to see both just because we don't see those as often as I feel like we should from some runners in some races. But you also opted not to go to Zora. Was there anything more to that than just not having the Moon Pearl, or fill me in on that?
I mean, I didn't have Moon Pearl. Zora wasn't in Logic. It would have been kind of a weird choice to make at that point to do that when I still had all of Escape. Hindsight, if I had done that, I would have seen the flute. Probably could have done some splash deletion to get it, to go up to Death Mountain to get the hook shot, to get Moon Pearl, and blah, blah, blah. But, I don't usually go for the Zora play unless I already have Moon Pearl or Zora's in Logic, because it just seems like a really out of the way one-off. So, and I ended up using the money to get Zora later, so it's not like my rupee routes were pointless. So,
yeah, I definitely agree with that. And in this seed, it wouldn't have even saved you from having to kill Agahnim with 2 gloves in the Dark World.
Mhm.
But it was just a point of curiosity, because I saw the 2 big rupee routing things that I like to see in Randomizer, and then we kept expecting the payoff, and it definitely turned out for you for the better this seed. So it was just me not reading what you were trying to do properly.
Yeah, I mean, like, I tend to go for the Zora plays or the fake flipper plays if it means I could potentially skip Aga. But I'm going to be completely honest with you. I landed on that pyramid and I was like, oh, I'm a dog. Okay. I completely forgot that I didn't have the Moon Pearl. So I was like, well, then that changes things a little bit. And then when I saw flippers, I was like, okay, this is fine as long as these don't immediately lead to like Moon Pearl on Hobo and then like Glove in Waterfall or something silly like that. So, but yeah, and always skip Agah's Cave because that place is trash and stinks real bad.
I was hoping that might have worked out because I figured you last location flippers on the pyramid, because that was the last location for me. I never do Aga without a Moon Pearl. And I was like, well, maybe that works out because the early game was just wacky enough that I thought maybe Willard makes a solo trip to Agahnim just because I know that's not typically part of your early route. Unless you did it because I do it, but I was like, Willard probably skipped Agahnim.
I did it a lot later after I got the flute, but before I got gloves and stuff. Because I want to see, because I had the book and I was like, I want to see what's on Desert Ledge, and then there was nothing, so I went ahead and checked Agah's Cave before going back to the Dark World or something like that. So
yeah, by my count, that was a Sphere 5 Moon Pearl.
Great.
Certainly not fun, that's for sure.
Well, it was interesting, that's for sure. Definitely a fun seed to play casually. I don't know if I like this one as a tourney race, because
it's a great daily seed.
I was very much expecting it was either gonna. I was actually expecting a larger margin of victory, like, because this is one of those seeds where you put off one location and you finish 10-20 minutes after your opponent. So the fact that it was still like a 4-minute finish time between the two of us is interesting. But based on the last seed, I have a feeling that me and P-Train kind of play and route similarly. So that maybe explains a little bit why we tend to follow a similar path and whatnot. So I don't know.
Yeah, even with some slight variances, like in where the divergences happened, I mean, you guys definitely were acting on some of the same instincts. I think that's a pretty salient point to make about that. And watching it back, you'll probably see that even with wide divergences, it came from a place of, hey, here's what's available to me and how I'm going to do it. But shifting gears here, since we kind of covered most of what we would talk about for the interview, I wanted to ask you guys. I'm sure you've seen the announcements today. You're both pretty knowledgeable, Link to the Past players. Am I going to see both of you guys in this RMG All Dungeons tournament? Come on, please. I must.
I would be surprised. I'm not going to say no, but that's a lot of stuff to learn, especially while I'm already doing a tournament currently. So odds are I'm probably not going to be part of that.
Oof. Well, my schedule kind of opened up, so maybe.
Gonna need to see some gamer moments coming out. So I also just wanted to put that out there, that there's a tournament, and any of you guys who are out there watching who like glitches in this game should definitely check it out. Alrighty, well, that pretty much covers everything I wanted to ask. Do you have any other questions you wanted to ask these two, Egg?
I did have one more thing I wanted to ask P-Train about. Looking at the bracket, you're in the round of 16 now. Congratulations on that. And your opponent in the next round is going to be whoever wins between Yagamoth and Aussie. You have any thoughts on either of those that you'd like to share, your potential next opponents? Before we wrap?
Actually, yes. Yagamoth knocked out my friend and league mate GFE from groups. So I think it would be fun to get a matchup against Yagamoth and be able to potentially avenge my friend GFE. So I think that would be a fun matchup. Either way, I know both of them are really good players. I'm more familiar with Aussie just because I feel like he's more notorious, and from my perspective on the community, I believe he was the top seed for SG Live. So either way, I have a tough matchup ahead of me, but I think I think it would be fun to have the Yagamoth matchup. But I'm looking forward to whoever wins. Either way, I'm just happy to still be part of the tournament.
Well, it's certainly come at the expense of a lot of really great runners. This has been kind of a wacky bracket to watch overall. Certainly, I mean, I think it's the top 4 of the last year's tournament have all been eliminated at this point, which is kind of just a strange thing to say at this point of a tournament. It really speaks to how high the skill ceiling has increased over the course of the last year since the last tournament. Everybody in this bracket has contention to win it. So, P-Train, I wouldn't be surprised to see you in the finals match myself. Wouldn't have been surprised to see Willard there either. So really excited to see just how far this game's come, and I'm excited to see how far you and others will push it, P-Train. Congratulations on your victory today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And GG again, Willard.
Yo, GG's. This was a great tournament. I had a lot of fun. Sad to be knocked out already, but I really like where the direction the main tournaments are going. I think this is probably the most well-run, and as coming from somebody who's run past main tournaments for ALTTPR, this was probably one of the best run tournaments from this community. And shout outs to everyone behind the scenes working on it. So thank you guys so much. I had a lot of fun, and I'll see you on commentary and in the next one.
Yeah. As a viewer and a volunteer, I'd just like to echo the point that I do agree that I feel like this tournament, both the format and the general how well it's been run, I think have been a great step up from even the previous ones, which weren't bad, but I think a lot of people thought they ran on too long or had other miscellaneous issues with them that I think everybody involved has gone a good way to resolve here. So,
well, we're looking forward to the conclusion of it. Looking forward to, as mentioned before earlier in the broadcast, the schedule tonight. We do have 2 more races on for the evening as we are getting closer and closer to the final couple of series left in this tournament. As everybody in this call actually already mentioned, this is a bit of a shorter tournament overall. We are very closely approaching the very end of the bracket. Not a year-long tournament, thankfully. This isn't a 512-person Swiss with a 7-week Swiss round. So we will end up finishing this before long. But the best way for you to actually catch all of these matches that are being restreamed is to follow all of the Speed Gaming channels, Speed Gaming in 2 through 6, as well as ALTTP Randomizer and their additional channels, 2 through 4. Of course, always give the runners a follow. These guys are definitely worth watching when it comes to getting better at the game, and worth learning from. And of course, a big shout out and thanks to my co-commentator Reg and our tracker Link Force today for keeping me honest on both fronts, to be honest with you. I think that's pretty much everything I've got to say. Reg, if you'd like to close us out, thank you folks for tuning in.
Yep. I think we've hit the high points pretty much across the board here, so we'll see you all over some other race. We've still got a fair bit to go with the tournament, and I'm sure everybody here will be around. So see you guys.
Have a great night.